Hi, welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I am your host, Emily Wagster Pettus. I am editor-in-chief of Mississippi Today, and I am very happy today that I am joined by Anna Wolfe, who is our Jackson editor / investigative reporter / Pulitzer Prize winner, and our CEO, Mary Margaret White. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here.
So the first thing I want to talk about is Mississippi Today as a nonprofit that people can give money to. Tuesday is, of course, Giving Tuesday. It's a tradition in this country to have people financially support causes and groups that they believe in. Mary Margaret, let's talk a bit about what Mississippi Today does with donors' money.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Emily. I'm so glad to be here. I realize this is a little bit of a departure from our regularly scheduled content, but we can't do it without reader support. So as many of our listeners know, Mississippi Today was the state's first nonprofit newsroom, and we will celebrate 10 years of publication in 2026, which for those of us who've been with the organization a long time, for our readers who've been with us all of the way, wow, it's just amazing.
10 years is really something.
Yeah, it's a true milestone for the newsroom. So as we move into 2026 and into 10 years of publication, we're going to be leaning on our readers and listeners more and more for their financial support. We like to talk about Giving Tuesday in the news world as Giving News Day.
Oh, like that. Little pun.
Yeah.
Play on words.
Little play on words. You know, supporting journalism through charitable giving is still like a fairly new concept for a lot of people. We all understand that we need to support the arts and children and, any other passion project that we as American society have traditionally supported with giving. But over the last, couple of decades, we've seen the news industry really change, and nonprofit news, I think, has risen to become really a solution for ensuring that our communities have the information they need to make good decisions, that we're learning more about each other, that we have ways to really understand complex issues that are humanized and really give us the perspective of people living through these issues. So I feel, really proud that the team at Mississippi Today has shown up and has reflected that back to Mississippians over the past 10 years. And in the last year, we've really put a focus on Jackson with Anna's team. And for those of us who live here in Jackson, this is our home. And so that's felt like an especially powerful development in the newsroom.
Of course, we know, since we've all worked in the news business, that it does cost money to do the work we do. Anna, can you talk some about the cost of just obtaining public records?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is kind of the thing that editors and reporters have the eyes on the most as far as the cost of what we do. So, we're putting in records requests all day, every day, and most agencies are charging us for every single request, regardless of how small or, easy of a request it may be to fill. We'll get invoices for $5 even. So there's really nickel and diming is very common, and that stuff adds up.
And can you talk about what kind of records you're referring to? Because I know most people in their day-to-day lives don't have to request public records. And honestly, the reason we're doing it is because we are providing the information that people have a right to know, but they don't have the time to go do it themselves. So what kind of records are you getting?
And we need to fact check, right? So we may think we know something, but we really kind of need to get the record to know for sure and feel comfortable publishing. We've been doing a lot of work on housing lately. My colleague Molly Minta has been really digging into the issue of housing across the city and the kind of intersection of housing and safety. So we're talking about, incident reports at apartment complexes.
And by incident reports, you mean like police reports?
Police reports, right. Yeah. One of the complexes that we've written about lately, we kind of identified as a place to look into because it was the single location in the city that had the most 911 calls of any address.
Oh, that's really something. Okay.
Right. And how were we able to say that? Through public records, of course.
Right. So you had the documentation to back it up. It wasn't just a hunch.
Exactly. We had the hunch, so we put in the records request, and sure enough, this was far and away the location in the city that had the most 911 calls. An apartment complex, not, an establishment, maybe a business or something. It was this place where, 400 people live. So, incident reports, rental registries, just, databases so that we can get our arms around everything that exists in this space. So apartment complexes, rental homes, Things like we did a story most recently about a woman who was prosecuted under a new state law that passed earlier this year that targets squatters, people who are living in homes that they don't have rights to.
They're not paying for.
They may not be paying for them, or they don't have a lease. There's all kinds of arrangements that can happen out here. But, it was really important to us to, if this was a law that was passed earlier this year to address a problem, why did lawmakers think that was a problem? What's really going on here? It was important to us for the first case. We identified this was the first case of someone being prosecuted under this new law. What is a squatter? How does one find themselves in that situation? So, instead of just working up the story about the court case, we went to her house and found her and interviewed her. And then we had to get public records to back that up. So we had to go to the courthouse and get those documents.
What kind of records did you get at the courthouse?
So the squatters' cases under this new law don't go through the justice court as eviction cases do. They go through the municipal court. And so we had to get the document that owner filed with the police department to start this process, the affidavit, the court documents that came out of the court case that showed what the judge did, those kinds of things.
Right. Okay. In addition to that, I know that you have done extensive work checking court records as well. And of course, court records cost money, both in the state system and in the federal system.
Yeah. So the easiest way that we have to go through court documents is the electronic court system. To expect us to be able to drive, which we also do, drive to every courthouse that we need to go to. That costs money too. You got to talk about gas and maintenance on your cars. But yeah, the electronic court system is hugely important and helps us access this information, but it costs money too. So every time you click on a filing, that's charging your account.
That's right. And those small amounts add up.
Absolutely.
Especially over the course of a month. And I know that our team has been doing extensive work investigating the Rankin County Sheriff's Department, for example, and those court documents. And they have really done a deep dive into a lot of this. Those court documents cost money. And so there are other expenses involved in the newsroom as well. I know, for example, that our mental health reporter, Alan Siegler, has done just yeoman's work over the last few months gathering information about how cities and counties are spending their share of the money from the opioid lawsuit settlement. He submitted public records requests, like 147 public records requests, I think, around the state, and I think got 146 responses on that. And this was a real effort on his part. I mean, it took weeks and persistence. We all heard him on the phone in the newsroom calling these local clerks and saying, no, these actually are public records. And of course, then there was the expense involved of getting those. In addition to that, Alan has traveled around the state. I know he went to Hattiesburg and talked to people down there who have lost loved ones to opioid addiction. And so, gathering the news does cost money. And it's an effort that we are committed to making because we do believe in accountability.
And I just have to say, coming from the Clarion Ledger, if there is a expectation that we're pinching pennies and that, it's that we're not trying to spend this money, it really blocks off a lot of avenues to getting answers. So, I would not want us to feel like we couldn't spend $50 on a public records request response that sometimes we don't know what we're going to get back,
That's true. That's true. Sometimes it's a bit of a fishing expedition, but you have to take that expedition to get the answers eventually.
And I wouldn't call it that because it's like we're doing when we send in a public records request is we have a question, we want an answer.
That's
and
right.
We think that the answer might be in these documents. If it's not, that's often a problem because why don't you have good records that answer the questions of the public, right?
Okay.
But, we don't always know that it's going to be fruitful. And I think that the fact that we do get the support, that we have the ability to go after that stuff without feeling like, I'm not sure if this is going to be worth the money, I think is wonderful, and it means that we're not hindering ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, one thing I would add, when we talk about Alan Siegler's reporting on the opioid settlement funds, in the newsroom we've said that he literally FOIA'd that information into existence.
That's right.
It didn't
did.
exist before Alan did the hard work of digging it up, getting it organized, analyzing it. And as we move into the new year, and I think, for years to come, a lot of data that we have relied on as journalists as the, measuring stick for how the state is progressing or declining is going away. We know federal data is, being removed, it's being taken down. And so I think as we move ahead, our work in, pulling records and organizing data is going to become more and more critical to the way that our communities understand what's happening in the state. So, the responsibilities of a journalist, I think, go far beyond what we might traditionally think about, reporting on a story, publishing it, getting it into the hands of readers who need that information most, into kind of a new world of data collection, dissemination, making that information available publicly.
That's right. And again, it doesn't happen for free.
That's exactly right. And Anna, you brought up the point of traveling. It's always been core to our mission to have our reporting really reflect Mississippi. And that does require being in every corner of the state. And I think a lot about Alex Rozier, our climate and environment reporter, who has spent, oh my goodness, so much time on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in North Mississippi, in some of the most rural parts of the state, really getting to know folks. It's not about one trip to make an interview and, bring along a photographer and get a picture. It's really about a deeper understanding of what people are going through, of what their experience is like. And that takes time. Trust building takes time. And our reader surveys show over and over that Mississippians really do trust our reporting. And that's not by accident. That's completely intentional. And time is money. We pay our reporters well. We, really, many of you may or may not realize this, but we have grown to be the largest newsroom in Mississippi. We have 30 full-time reporters and editors. And that is something we're really proud of. We bring in support from Mississippi Today through readers and listeners like you all who can support the newsroom on Giving News Day or, at any time by going to MississippiToday.org and clicking donate, but also through foundational support, through major gifts. We do some sponsorships and advertising, but it's a mix of revenue that comes in that really allows the reporters to stay in the field, stay with the story, because as we've seen with so many of the stories we've published this year, you turn over a rock and you find a snake, and there's more to tell. That's
right. And I do want to mention as well, we have a reporter in our newsroom who is dedicated to covering the Delta, who is very knowledgeable about that part of the state. Leonardo Bevilacqua, or Leo, as we know him in the newsroom, previously worked as a teacher up in the Delta before he became a journalist, and he's very well connected there. And he has been able to do some, I think, outstanding coverage of that part of the state. It is, anyone who's lived in Mississippi long enough knows that the Delta is culturally very significant, but is often overlooked in terms of economic development and other opportunities. And we really want to shine a spotlight on the Delta in all of its many facets. I mean, not only as a place that has a lot of economic problems, but a place that has, frankly, just some really interesting people and really compelling stories to tell. So we're so happy to have Leo doing that work.
Well, and I think you make a good point about the compelling stories. The work we do, we've really cut our teeth on accountability reporting, but it's not just about accountability. It's about reporting on accomplishment and solutions, and we see that in every beat across the newsroom. One of the new teams at Mississippi Today is a video team, and again, we were the state's first nonprofit newsroom and one of the first digital-only newsrooms. And again, 10 years ago in Mississippi, it was like, wait, you're not going to print a paper? How is this going to work? What I think that has done for us is it has allowed us to remain really nimble through the years. So when we first started, we were publishing straight to the website. Then we realized that newsletters were going to be a key way to reach readers and to really get people engaged with the work. From there, social media has always played a part in our distribution strategy, but we built a texting line where we could literally have two-way conversations with readers. Now video has become such an important tool in the way that we get the stories out. So it's the same, high quality, in-depth, well-researched Mississippi Today reporting, but brought to you in a different format from the reporters directly. And we're seeing folks respond to that so very well. But once again, that takes graphics, resources. We've got a super talented team that makes those videos easy to understand, easy to digest, in many ways really fun to watch.
That's right.
And again, more video, more explainers. I think just really getting creative about the way we're delivering the news and going to where people are consuming news.
That's right. And I also want to shout out our two very talented staff photographers, Vicki and Eric, who do, I think, just a fantastic job of illustrating the stories. And, a reporter can often sit in the newsroom and do the story based on phone calls. The photographers have to go to the places, and they are going to the places in all parts of the state. And great credit to them for, again, being nimble, for having the flexibility and the news judgment to be part of the team and to really illustrate what our reporters are writing about.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that may be a little bit of inside baseball, but I think is interesting and many of our listeners will care about, is that professional development has always been like a core value of the newsroom. So as journalism changes, the skills that our journalists have also need to grow and evolve. Mm-hmm. Data journalism is a really good example of that. We've had several reporters attend intensive data journalism trainings over the past year. Our video team and our photographers are often taking professional development courses to sharpen their skills. We have a tremendous health team at Mississippi Today. I'm super proud that we've had fellows or journalists receive fellowships, again, to better understand the way that the healthcare space is evolving, new challenges that they're facing, smarter ways to really understand these changes and how to read the data about the changes. So again, professional development ensures that the reporters stay sharp and can continue to deliver our readers the best information possible.
That's great. Anna, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what the Jackson team has going on and what you're looking at in the near term?
Yeah, like I said, we're doing a lot on housing right now. So we're going to continue on that reporting. Jackson formed a housing task force earlier this year under John Horn. So we're kind of looking at, what they're going to propose, keeping an eye on the fact that it has felt a lot of times in that room that they're more focused on the issues that landlords are facing as opposed to the issues that tenants are facing. So we hope to really bring that conversation around to, what are tenants actually experiencing. One story we published just recently about that apartment complex kind of focused on the physical issues inside the apartment complexes, so the habitability of these places. And to your point about photographers, the photos were just devastating.
Amazing. Yeah, they were. Vicki King did an incredible job of illustrating some of the conditions that people are living in. That, the residents at this apartment complex are very much subject to the landlords not keeping conditions like the mold in some of these apartments.
Yeah, and this is what people are really dealing with. And a few years ago we had the Landlord Protection Act. Earlier this year we had the Real Property Owners Protection Act. Tenant protection? ?
Right. It's not a big topic of discussion.
We have regulators
at the legislature.
Right. We have regulators that are tasked with going out and inspecting and ensuring that these properties are livable, and they seem to be kind of passing these properties when you can go inside and look for yourself and see that they're not acceptable condition.
Right. And I will say that the one thing that we are intensely interested in at Mississippi Today is quality of life for people in Mississippi. And whether it is people who are living in apartment complexes that are not maintained, or residents of Jackson who have been living for a long time with a water system that has been problematic. And, there are changes that have been made in the last couple of years, but we're keeping an eye on the changes in the water quality and the billing issues. But then, there are a lot of other issues dealing with quality of life in this state that, of course, our political team up at the Capitol is keeping an eye on things like infrastructure spending and education spending. And, of course, with the legislative session coming up, the whole issue of school choice is going to be front and center and probably just will shape all other conversation at the Capitol. And we are fortunate to have not only our regular political team, but also some of our education reporters who will be intensely following that process.
Yeah, I love that about our team. You know, we talk about collaboration a lot. We've got some wonderful collaborations right now with newsrooms like the New York Times and the Marshall Project, and the list goes on. But the collaboration that happens within the newsroom is so inspiring, because in Mississippi, one issue is not really just about one issue.
No, that's true.
Education is about government and politics, and housing is about healthcare. And the way that our reporters, who are subject matter experts in their own right, come together and work together is absolutely inspiring.
Right. The collaboration across teams in our newsroom is something that I think we should all really be proud of. And, you know, again, back to Giving Tuesday and the funding, one thing I do want to say is that a lot of the work that happens at Mississippi Today, you see it in the end product, but you don't necessarily know about it as a news consumer. And that is the invisible work that our editors are doing. People like Debbie Skipper, who has more than 40 years of experience in journalism and has such sterling news judgment, and she's so good at what she does. And, you know, Jeff Pender, our political editor, and I'm going to get in trouble. Like, I should name all of the editors here individually. Like, I'm proud of our team, the expertise that we have brought together. Our new education editor, Marquita Brown, has decades of experience as a journalist and working within sort of education circles. Our new health editor, Laura Santanum, who previously worked at PBS NewsHour. Of course, Anna, our Jackson editor, you know, brings all of this experience. And tell me, who am I leaving out here? We have...
I think the one person that we haven't mentioned is Kate Royals.
Kate Royals, our managing editor, yes. Kate really does the work of multiple people. And again, it's invisible, a lot of it, to the outside world, but Kate really holds our newsroom together. She is an experienced journalist. She has covered health, and she stepped up to become managing editor a few months ago. And she's really, I think, doing a fantastic job supporting the journalism, supporting the product that we all end up seeing.
That's right.
I just love it. I came up under Jeff and Debbie. They were my editors at the Clarion Ledger. Kate and I worked together at the Ledger, back when I started my career. And that's part of what makes, working here so special to me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And of course, Michael Guidry is working on our audio projects, and Richard Lake is our video editor. Give them a shout out as well. I think the whole team effort really shows up.
Yeah, and our community has really shown up to make sure the work can happen. We'll be able to announce later this week a matching grant for year-end giving through Newsmatch, which is our year-end fundraising campaign. Giving News Day is a big part of that. But we have a local foundation here in Mississippi that's offering us a matching grant. Again, sorry to be coy, but we'll be announcing it later this week. So that means that any donation made is going to be matched by this local foundation. So your money goes twice as far to meet the mission, to support our reporters, to support getting the news into the hands of people that need it most. Mississippi Today is free to read. I mean, there's never a paywall to, access our stories, listen to this podcast, review the data, check out the videos, you name it. And so as we move into 2026, we have a year-long calendar of events planned, ways to really bring people together, because I think we're all hungry for that. We want to gather. We want to talk about what's happening in the world around us. We want to find ways to work together towards solutions. And the newsroom really, I think, envisions itself as a convener in those conversations throughout the next year. So again, all gifts made through the end of the year will be matched. Because of Newsmatch, which is a national campaign supporting journalism, we'll be able to unlock some bonuses if we reach certain goals, if we bring in, a certain amount of new donors to Mississippi Today. So your support means a lot. If you enjoy this podcast, if you're listening to it regularly, we'd really love to see your support. And put a note when you make a gift, say, the other side, this is how I get my news. And we'll be glad to share that with your usual host of the podcast.
That's right. That's right. And forgive me just a moment. I did neglect to mention Bobby Harrison, who is a veteran journalist here in Mississippi. He's frequently a guest or a host on The Other Side, and he is our Mississippi Ideas editor. Bobby solicits opinion columns, opinion pieces, like well-informed, well-researched pieces from people who are Mississippi residents, or in some cases recently people who live outside the state but do have ties and connections here. Again, thank you both today, Anna and Mary Margaret. I appreciate your time, and this is The Other Side. Thanks for listening.